In the couple minutes we have remaining, Andrew, I want to direct this question to you. It's a question dear to my heart because it's about an issue that my brother David Harwood and his wife Ellen Marshall, who are past colleagues of Barbara Larkin, work on with the UN Foundation, and that is this. What position does your candidate hold on international reproductive health programs? How is it different from the opponents' programs, the Mexico City policy, and other restrictions on organizations running these programs abroad?
You could go to the website, and there may well be a statement. I haven't read it, so I don't know the answer to that question.
Are you aware?
Yes.
Well, so you can state the position for both campaigns. Go ahead.
Well, no,
Fairly.
no, I don't. I don't know Senator McCain's position. I can presume, but that wouldn't be fair, and I'm a very fair and decent person. And Andrew, when we're not debating as a colleague, so I think he's right. I think you can check that out. I think Senator Obama has spoken most frequently about this in reference to PEPFAR and the fact that there are provisions in that and in aspects of our foreign aid which are less rooted, quite frankly, in science than in less rooted in science than they possibly should be. And I think one of the things we've got to think about with something like Mexico City.
Well, maybe they're rooted in moral values.
Well, they may well be, and I don't doubt the intentions of some people who support them, but I do not think in just the same way that Andrew said you can't impose political reform on a country, I think that there are choices that it is people's right to make. And I think we need to honor that. I think it is fine if we advocate a particular choice. But something else we need to think about on Mexico City, and I am naive and idealistic enough to hope that this might be a place where someday when we become a mature political country capable of a really healthy dialogue we can look at. What happens with this is that when administrations change, we flip-flop. When the Clinton administration came in, we went our way on Mexico City and lifting the bans. When the Bush administration came in, they put them back on. And what effect this has in the field, and I imagine that any of the care people who work in the field know this, is that we're off and on, stop and start. We go from supporting certain kinds of health clinics and programs in a certain country to pulling our funding to putting it back. And at the very least, I would hope that if we have a political debate in this country, fair enough, on reproductive rights, let's have it in this country, and let's not impose our off and on political battle on the women, children, and families of the developing world.
Can I make a comment on this?
Yeah. Go for it.
And I'm not speaking from, I'm just going to tell you a fact, which is very troubling to me. Your reaction to this is very interesting. Abortion is illegal in almost all of Africa. And Africans, if you look at the polling data, are opposed to abortion. They want it to remain illegal, and I think there's only one country in Africa, I think it's South Africa, that has liberalized the abortion laws. There's only one country in Latin America, one or two countries, I think, that have liberalized their abortion laws. Now, that is not because some elite is imposing it on. It is because the population does not support it. I mean, we take secular Western culture and we impose it on deeply religious, and I don't mean just Christian, Muslim and Buddhist societies as well. There are admittedly areas in Asia, in Bangladesh, for example, where there is a debate over some of these issues, in India. But the great bulk of the Arab world, Sub-Saharan Africa, and Latin America, abortion is illegal. This debate is a domestic debate that frankly, both Republicans and Democrats, for domestic political purposes, have brought up. I agree with Gail, but we may disagree on this issue. Reproductive rights is a nice thing for us to talk about. That is not where people in the third world are. You can always find someone who will take your position. Look at the polling data, look at the statutes in these countries. This debate is an irrelevant debate in many of these countries because if you go into another and you start doing abortion, you are violating the laws of those countries. We can get into a lot of political trouble in a very profound way in those societies by doing that.
No,
All right, hold on.
You can boo all you want to. That's what the law is.
2 seconds to close.
But hold on.
No. Not contraception. Okay.
Two quick
Contraception
things.
is legal in
Andrew.
most of these countries. AID's budget has been, for the 8 years I was in office, it was never touched. $435 million. The largest health program in the AID budget, which I have personally, I don't want to start making my own opinion here. It's a huge, it's the 70% of all contraception in the developing world is paid for by AID, according to OECD statistics at the DAC in Paris.
Okay.
Look at the data.
Look, I think that this
This is not, I'm
isn't
not
an
talking for
issue-
John McCain, I'm just telling you what the facts
This
are. okay?
isn't an issue about whether abortion is legal or illegal in a given country. This is an issue about whether we turn off and on a spigot or we
I agree
make
with you.
judgments about what our funding can be used for. The one place I would disagree with you, Andrew, and I suspect we actually don't disagree and you would agree with me. Polling data may tell us one thing, but polling data in Africa rarely targets rural women. And rural women in Africa.
I beg your
Hear me
pardon.
out.
No, no.
Hear me out, Andrew.
I don't agree with you.
Well, I do. I spent 20 years in Africa, most of it in rural areas. I speak 3 languages. I talk to these women all the time. I believe there are women here who do. I have yet to ever meet one who was ever part of a poll. But number 2, I have yet to meet a woman for whom reproductive rights, whether they take your position, my position, the very right of a woman to make a decision about her own body isn't of paramount importance. And the judgments may be different. Her choice may be that she is against abortion. She may even be against contraception. But that reproductive right to make that decision herself, I have yet to meet a woman in Africa who didn't think that was important.
Let's separate the contraception issue from the abortion issue. They're not the same issue. I am pro-life. I've always been pro-life. I will always be pro-life. I think it's barbaric to kill children before they're born. That's my personal opinion. I am strongly in favor of contraception. AID's program was not touched for the 7 years of the Bush administration, contrary to a lot of garbage that was put out by some of the advocacy groups in Washington. We were cutting. You've made comments, Gail, about the PEPFAR program. You know, I was up in Maine at this conference, and these are retired Foreign Service officers, and I went up to speak, and someone said, well, 60% of the PEPFAR, $15 billion, goes for abstinence programs. I said, who told you that?
I didn't say that.
No, you didn't.
Okay.
But people are spreading that around in the advocacy community. It's complete nonsense.
Guys,
You couldn't.
I'm getting the hook. And
That
so,
means we're getting the hook.
thank you, guys.